Moxley comes down after the match and he says that the only thing he has ever asked of Eddie Kingston is for 100% to be given. You're someone that thinks the world is against you, but it seems a lot of people love you, and a lot of people are going to love you on Saturday, and they deserve your maximum effort. But the problem is, I know I'm better than you, and you know that you can't beat me. You've already lost. You're already making excuses. The last time, a few years ago, I let you die a warrior's death, but you're not going to get that favor from me this time. And if you want to become a Triple Crown holder like all of your heroes, you're going to need to earn every inch. And before Moxley can wrap it up, Kingston grabs the mic. He's been holding it in this whole tournament. He has been staying. He has been trying to control his anger, but he just lets it out here on Moxley. He says, you're not going to come here and teach me like your young boy bitch Yuta. I'm your senpai. You're lucky I let you breathe. Yeah, I hate myself more than anyone else, but I'm going to push you. A while back, I was going to quit AEW, but you said I can't quit because we need to shape the younger guys. I will give you everything that I have, and that's my outline. And then the credits came up, and that was the end of Dynamite, one of the best episodes of the year from AEW. Perfect ending to the show.
Honestly, maybe the show would have been better off if it just cut off.
It would have been significantly better if this was the final image that we had on this show.
This showdown was just so great between these two. It was a type of showdown where you could kind of tell, hey, these guys were just going to go out there. They were going to completely wing what they were going to say with the complete trust of everybody in the back, because who can you rely on but these two to deliver like organic feeling, live, real sounding promos. Not only did they, so they've kept Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley pretty much apart for like a long time. They've had interactions via the BCC, but their grudge has never really kind of been like pried into like it has been tonight. And maybe that was because they wanted to hold off until this specific moment. But they, in a short amount of time, got into so much, their history together. You had basically like, telling you what the stakes are here for Eddie Kingston. This is a story for Eddie Kingston. He has to beat the person that, is better than him, quite frankly, and he has to prove to the world that he is better than Jon Moxley and that he's capable of beating him. And not only did we get that setup, not only did we get a bit of history, we got a bit of Eddie Kingston vulnerability as well. Him talking about hating himself more than he hates anybody else in the world. I mean, you never want to hear somebody say that, because I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it, but it's also part of the reason why we love Eddie Kingston. A tough guy like that on the surface, being willing to admit a very real human, feeling that a lot of us might have gone through at some point. So it was in a few minutes, they did so much here to set up this final.
Yeah. I think, listen, for all that we have talked about the difficulties of booking a tournament like this, of making it all make sense. Like, I thought this was a really great tournament, and not just for match quality. There were so many stories within this tournament. There's stories coming out of it, as small as Jay Lethal going 0 for 5 in the tournament, and right up until this Eddie Kingston through line throughout the entire thing. Danielson's quest to get to the final here. We got some really interesting matches. I mean, they were generally the highlight of the shows throughout. I thought that this was a really, really well booked tournament overall. I think we all knew the wrestling was going to be the least of everyone's worries, but this also requires luck of not having someone that gets hurt that just throws everything out the window, and they were able to get by.
Agreed. I thought like a G1's not easy to book.
It's incredibly complex if you just sit down, like just do your picks every year and imagine that you have to structure this to all peak, and that your audience has to get into these stories too, so that they can understand the stories and they're wanting what you're leading them towards.
I should say maybe a round robin tournament is maybe anybody could book it, but to build one with the sort of standard of the G1 in mind and constant comparisons being made to the G1 is incredibly difficult. And I would say at least like towards the end, I think the point scenarios were interesting enough to get you invested. I thought the outcomes at the end of the tournament were unpredictable enough. And the narrative throughout, I thought, was sensical enough to make the whole thing feel like one very solid, well thought out piece. Like you said, John, getting a lot of people over in the process, not just the winner at the end. So, no, what do you see for it next year? Do you see any changes? Do you see them sticking to the same format? And what sort of talents do you think are sort of like, ideal for a tournament like this?
Well, I think the obvious one everyone is going to look towards is, are you going to get a Will Ospreay and you're going to get 6 matches out of him in a month? I think by next year, they can make it a big deal when they just make a big deal out of announcing the participants, because it was so, like, it was what, on YouTube the afternoon of. I would like to see them actually announce the schedule of matches. So, like, I don't see who that harms, that weeks in advance what cities are getting which matches. You're going to have big, like, we know it'll be big matches. You could have an Ospreay, you could have an Omega. Like, you can certainly have significant turnover of the talents. It doesn't have to be too many repeats next year. It can be some. Those would be kind of my 2 things, but just you've now established it that the audience is going to take it seriously as something more than just another tournament in a company that does a lot of them. Like, I do think they did a great job of establishing this as like our big year end type of round robin tournament. So those would be just some of the little things I would like to see change, but I had no issue with like the point system, and I don't think you have to tinker with it too significantly.
I agree. I think one of the things that really worked about it was the fact that they were so sort of strict about not having any DQs. Tonight being the exception, but I mean, even tonight in the 3-way, I thought it's been established in wrestling that you're allowed to use weapons and all that. So I had no real issue with it. It's just really kind of been like a great sort of counter to what has been a pretty sort of heavily criticized, devil storyline that's been going on throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah, to be honest, like we will look back at like the best and worst of the year, but when it comes to like AEW's booking, that I'm sure is going to be in a lot of people's focus over the next like week or so, I think this is one of the stronger booked elements of AEW all year, was this Continental Classic.
We'll see if they stick the landing. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's got to be Kingston winning, right? Just given the story they've set up, given the fact that like Moxley is about to go to New Japan and compete for another championship, which he might not win. Is it pretty much a lock that Eddie Kingston comes out of this being the Triple Crown champ?
I don't say anything's a lock. I mean, that is a logical story to get to, of Kingston winning. I think that will be the biggest moment on the show. Quite frankly, this feels bigger than the title match to me.
Could they fly Kawada in to present him with the
oh my gosh, can you imagine? No, they'll put him in the front row and he loses.
God, don't bring your family, Eddie Kingston.
Hats off 2023, the year of the family and friends in the front row.
It is New York. I mean, let's remember that.
Oh well. Yeah, like the location is certainly not lost on people.
It's gonna be Eddie. Come on.